Right, good morning and welcome to our third and final section of our Field Look training. This is part 3, and we will be going through the website functionality and data analysis and how you can use the website. So the first thing that we have to do is to sign into our account. If you don't have an account yet, you can always sign up here for free. Right, so I'm going to sign into that account and say sign in. Right. So after you've logged in, it will pull up all of your fields here. Now I have fields all over the Western Cape, so it kind of zoomed everything out for me. So what I'm going to do is just show you how it all works. So what I have here is these are all of my grape blocks. So they fall under my grape farm. And how we interpret these colors is you will see right here at the bottom. And how it interprets these colors. So it takes all of the fields that you have that are the same crop type and the same variety if you classify them according to variety. Otherwise, it just takes them according to crop type. And what it does, it then I compare them with each other. And then the blocks that are of average value between all of them will then will be colored orange. And if they are 15% lower than the others, then it will be red, like all of these that we see here. Or if it's 15% higher value, it will then give you a plus 15%. Now you can even go through the different parameters. So it puts on biomass production. But if we want to see, okay, but let's look what the actual evapotranspiration looks like. Does it have the same picture that we see here? So we see that this cab sav block, there you can see the values of it, everything quite low. Actual evapotranspiration is very, very low. So that's why everything is so low here. So this is how you can then see all your fields. But now it's an easy way to quickly look at all your fields and see if there's something out. So this is just one of the views. If you want to go, let's say here, we'll see some more fields here. If we click on this one, this I also put as a red, as a Merlot block, and that's where we can see then this one is green for the actual evapotranspiration. So I did a higher actual evapotranspiration compared to the other red wine grapes. And this was just a test block that I drew in. So this is how you interpret this MyFieldOverview. So where it usually used to be like those columns of data and just values, it is now the data is given in a more visual format, so you can compare them. Okay, I'm not going to push my luck to zoom into other forms with it. So what you can see here is you'll see there's quite a few buttons. At the bottom here in the right-hand corner, if you want to add a new field, this is what it will do, but that's what we covered in part 1. It's currently set on week 36. So this week's data will actually be loaded tonight. And then if you look at it tomorrow, you will see it will be week 37. Currently, you can't go a week back, but we are working on it. But you can go through various seasons here if you want to. So let's say I want to look at all my 2020 season fields. Oh, zooms it out again. What's interesting here is now we see that at the end of July, of August, so kind of the last week of the 2020-21 season, we saw some variation here. These parts had higher growth, that was the average growth, and those blocks were a lot lower than the rest. Even if we look at it through, let's say, present nitrogen in the total plant, we see again that was average and those are a lot lower. If we look at our vegetation index, we see now we're starting to get a picture where is my real problem areas that I'm looking at. So that's how you can then quickly see per week, where are my blocks that I really need to focus on. And then you'll see, is a button, kind of little arrow. If you click on that, it's going to give you a list of all of your fields loaded on your profile. That is what was normally alphabetically on the side. Currently, they have taken away all the categories. So it will just be the blocks that you see here. If you want to view a specific block, you can get the name. If you click on a block like I just did there, it's going to open the block that you clicked on. It's going to give you all the values there. If, say, for instance, you want to change the name of this block or any of the details, you will click on that arrow again. And what it will first do is then take you to all the data for that 2021 season. And here you can see the biomass production from week to week. And you can scroll through it and we'll give you the date and then also the value for it. But you can do that for the various parameters as well, divided on, under the 3 categories that we spoke about. What you can also do is if we click on, let's say, this one, and I go to field, it will then give me, the field map for that specific week of 14 to 20 June. And here we can see we are currently at the vegetation index, that this section has a much better vegetation index compared to this section here. Now, currently we don't have the values at the bottom here. We are working to get that back into the system, but what you can do is to see whether that contrast is really in context. If it's really a contrast or not, you can click on this little eyedropper here, and if you click on a specific pixel, it will say, okay, that specific color there at that GPS coordinate is 0.68. That's a good value. This green color here is at that GPS coordinate, that GPS coordinate is the center of the pixel, that's the value. So we know that there we have a bit of a problem in that block there. And there it's fine again, but that's how we move on. If we go a week back, you can scroll your weeks through here, but it's automatically going to go through the field. We to the graph, and we are working on that. You can then see if it changes from week to week, but that might take a while if you want to do it like click it there, click it there, click it there. So I'm first going to do this section, and then I'm going to show you what would have been the equivalent of MyFieldAnalysis. So this, what you're seeing here would be the equivalent if you opened a block, then you had the graph at the top and then the pixel map for the specific week. Now this week is just indicated here at the bottom. You can see your pixel map here, and if you go to graph, you'll see your graph over here. If you don't want to see a graph, but rather a table with the data, you can click on that, and then it will give you the dates with a specific value for the parameter that you have selected. If you want to change any of the specifications of the block, you can click here on field specifications, and you will then see what it is, everything there. Now, you can share this field with someone. In other words, it appears on their profile, but they can only view it. They can't make any changes to it. And then you just click on share in this field, and then you put that person's email address that they use for their Fruitlook account on there, and it says add this watcher. And then it will tell you it has been shared to them. So if, let's say, for instance, that you want to change something about it, let's say the name of the block or anything, you go to edit specifications, and then you can change any of this. But what we found is that if you want to change the details of a block, this is our red wine grape, and we are making this Cab Sauv. Cabernet Sauvignon. You have to change absolutely every one of these details. If you only change one or two of them, it doesn't make the change. So for instance, I didn't put any of that in there. I just changed the cropper and the cropper right, and I said, okay. It didn't apply any of those changes. But if I say edit the specifications, Cabernet. I don't know, this is quite a, no idea when this block was planted. And you have to put a date in there. Then you will see it will take those changes. See. If you only fill in certain of them, then it won't take the changes. You have to fill in absolutely everything. And you can always change any of the details in there if you want to at a later stage. So again, we see this vegetation index here, but what you'll see here is it's very specific dates, 7 September, 22nd, 12th of October. And the reason why it's not so evenly spaced is our instantaneous data sets. Now that's your vegetation index, your leaf area indexing, and then your 2 nitrogens. It is whenever the satellite comes over and they have an orbit cycle of anything between 3 and 5 days, when they come over and there isn't more than 20% cloud, then they can take a photo. If your value all of a sudden, drops, then you have to go look at the spatial map for it. Let's quickly check here. Why did it drop here? Let's say in February. We go to the field. It didn't go to February. I need to make a note that that functionality is not working. If we go to field now, we can see that it was overall low, but there was no 0 values. Okay, so the reason why that was low is not because there was clouds, it was just quite low. But what's interesting here, if we look at this block here, there's an area that's a lot higher growth. Now you have to ask yourself, why is that section over there? Why does it have that high growth? Is it maybe a tap that was leaking there and then it caused a lot of growth, or what could have possibly been the reason for that? And that's how you can go through all of these parameters to look at your field, either through a graph or on the field section, but that's only if you're looking at one parameter. And then if you just want to export all the values for the whole season just for this one block, you can click on Export CSV, and it will then export the data for all the parameters from just that specific block for this specific year in a CSV format, all of the parameters. And because it's all the parameters, the weekly data sets and the instantaneous data sets have different dates. So there might be columns with missing data in it. It's just because the dates aren't updated on the same dates for the instantaneous and the weekly data sets. Just quickly get my guide here. Right, so let's quickly go back. So if we go back to the map section over here, that's where we see all the fields. If you're in this section and you want to view a specific block, that's when you go down, you go to the map and then down the list here to view and edit a specific block. If you want to compare your different fields with each other, that's when we go to this list section right here at the bottom. What is this? Right. And that's where we then see those color schemes coming out. If we click on a specific block, we can then, it's also a way to go to that viewing page of either going directly from the map, or you can export the data, or you can delete that field over here. So this is another way of how you can delete a field, is by clicking on those 3 little dots, and it's either view, export, or delete that field. So like I mentioned, how we categorize the colors here is it takes all the blocks of that specific crop, and if it's further specified the cultivar, it even compares it then on cultivar level. And again, the average value of the blocks will be in yellow, 15% and higher is green, 15% and lower will then be your red colors. And that's also just an easy way to quickly have a look at your different cultivars. So here we have my different farms and it's different crops, as you can see here. But let's have a look at all these color blocks here. So one thing that I'm kind of looking at is that all of these values are low, except the cumulative, that one's a little higher. Our ET deficit, we've asked them to change the scale around for the ET deficit, because a low ET deficit is actually a good value. It's actually a good thing. But it's in red, so it's a very psychological thing. That red we kind of associate with bad, and green we associate with good. So we have asked them if we can maybe switch it around, that the higher value is then in red. In other words, that 2.03 and 1.59 must be in red, and then our lower value for the ET deficit is green, which means it's good. So what we can see here is that for all of my apples, I see that these blocks are a little higher than the rest. Actual evapotranspiration is also quite low. There's not much happening in galas right now, so it's not something that I expect. And then you can also have a quick glance at your your biomass water use efficiency. If throughout your use of Fruit Look, if you have any ideas how we can even improve this by means of either bringing back the categories or something like that, please let us know. And we will ask the developers to bring it into the platform. Like, for instance, my thing that I want to do is be able to filter according to crop and just look at my crop, not in alphabetical order, but filter per crop. Okay, but this is all of your fields together. Now, if you want to look at specific fields, so I'm going to select all of my citrus blocks here. That's not a citrus block. Or Cambria is citrus, but I changed it. Midnight. So if you select a few of them, you can go to compare fields. You can then select a parameter that you want to compare it with. Let's say I want to look at all the ET deficits for that, and then view comparison. What it does is, this is the equivalent. Okay, it's thinking. This is the equivalent of the MyFieldAnalysis, this compare fields. And what it does is it puts then all of that from the same parameter on the same graph. And then as you hover over the graphs, it will then show you what specific field that is. If it loads. Come on, field, don't let me down. While we wait for this to load, if you have any questions, please type it for me in the Q&A or in the chat box. I know my Q&A is here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Right, now you can see that all of those blocks that I selected is in here. And it looks very convoluted, but if you want to isolate a block, you just hover over it and it will give you the line of where that field is. And then you can very quickly see, where do you compare? And this is a great functionality if you want to compare your blocks that are all kind of close together of the same cultivar. I selected now all of the citrus blocks, but what would actually be more ideal, so let's go back to the overview. Voila. I just want to look at my autumn golds. Right, so now we can see, then you can select all your cultivars together, and then you can see, okay, which one of these blocks tend to have a higher growth? Why is it such a higher growth? Is it maybe better soil? Is the one maybe a newer block than the rest? And then you can also switch between the different parameters, and it'll show you how it runs along. even the ETDEF. So what's interesting about these two autumn gold blocks is their ETDEF values run very similar, but you can see that their growth varies a lot, which will be an indicator that when it comes to biomass quartz efficiency, that the one is slightly higher than the rest, but it's also not that much. So it tends to look like the one just grows a little slower, but it handles the stress very much the same as the other one. One is just just grows more. So this is for the graphs that you can then look at. And like I said, either you hover over the name there or over the graph to get the specific values of the specific peaks. Or if you go to fields, it will then load them like this for you, where you can then see all your values, and as you scroll through them. I'm going to put it on biomass production. So now you see that the values are all here in the red and orange. So we're not going to see a lot of contrast, although we can already see some contrast. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this value down to there, and then we're going to see a lot better contrast. It's busy loading here. Now I can see in this block here, there's an area of a lot lower growth. See, in the beginning of the season, it's fine, but as soon as the season kicks off, it's kind of an area of concern. If it's consistent, I'm thinking it's more of a soil thing, especially if you look at the pattern there. But then you have to go ask yourself, if that soil difference is so large, maybe I should not include it into this block, but maybe treat it as a separate block, as a different production unit or management unit, because it's so much lower. Okay, these are still just busy loading. So yeah, we've noticed that it says there that's the 2021-22 season, but if you look at the date there, it loads the right season, because I'm looking at historical data. And that's how you can then go through all of your fields. And that's your field comparison section, basically, what we're seeing here. And this will be then what was the equivalent to the graph comparison. So that's how the only thing that we currently have is that you can't put multiple parameters or multiple years underneath each other. And that is something that I've asked for, that that they bring that functionality back, so that you can see, you know, how did I compare to last year? Did I improve on it? Did I not improve on it? But what you can do is, if you are interested in that data and pulling in your own graphs, that's why we have this export CSV value or export CSV at the bottom, so that you can export this raw data for FieldLook and draw your own graphs at the end of the day. So that is how the website works at the moment. It's whenever you go back to the overview, this will be the equivalent of your MyFieldOverview. There's the week, there's the date. If you want to change the year, you change it here. There's all your fields. If you want to compare them for the MyFieldComparisons, that's when you just select them and say, as soon as you have two, you can compare them. If you want to delete a field, you can do it here, or just export a single field. Or if you want to export all of the data sets, that's when you can go export CSV for all of the fields. Or if you just want to select 2 or 3 of them, to all of these autumn golds, you can say export CSV, and what it will do is that it will export all of those fields that you've selected, their CSV data. And then this is what the CSV data looks like. Very raw data. And remember what I said about, you know, there's going to be a lot of gaps in the data, because your instantaneous data sets, like your leaf area indexing, is measured on different dates than your weekly data sets, like your evaporation deficit. So yeah, what we've also asked is that it's not possible now, but what we have asked is that you can select which parameters you want to export. But you can always, there's a lot of functionality in Excel itself that you can also do it yourself. So let's go to data and say, we filter it and say, right, I only want to see my actual evapotranspiration values and my ET deficit values. Bam. Here we go. Now we have that for all of those fields. And you can then do quite a few calculations, but actually I don't want to, I'm going to export last season's data, because what I want to do is I want to show you how you can calculate a crop water requirement for a block. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to export just these 4 blocks. And this is the 2021 season. I'm going to say export CSV. Right. Now it has exported the entire season for me. And again, to get rid of all those parameters, I don't want to see all of those parameters. I'm just going to filter and say, okay, I just want to see my actual evapotranspiration, the biomass water use efficiency, and our ET deficit. Yeah, right, there we go. When you do your calculation for your water requirement, I'm going to go right here to the end. You can decide, do I want to do it for the entire season, for the entire 12 months? Let me just see the order of that. Actual ET, biomass water efficiency. Okay. Do I want to do that for the entire 12 months? Or do I only want to do it for a certain period between, let's say, I only want to start in September and my season ends in like end of April, and do it only for that period. So you can decide what you want to do. But for all intents and purposes, biomass water use efficiency, I am going to use all 12 months for the 2020 season. Let me just make sure you did it with biomass water use efficiency. Okay. So what I do is to get the sum of the actual evapotranspiration for that specific block. I'm going to do sum, and that's going to be my entire year. But you can choose your own period that is applicable to your crop or even your variety. All right. So that will then give me my millimeters per season. And I'm going to do the same for the actual evapotranspiration, but for the biomass water use efficiency, I'm not going to do the sum function. What you want to do there is have your average biomass water use efficiency for that field. And if you want to, then you can copy this, kind of this whole little formula over here. Oh, geez. Oh, that's why it doesn't want to do that, because it's missing data. That's why. You can then do kind of copy the formula down for your different blocks, but I'm just going to focus on this block. Okay, so this now is our millimeters per season for the ET deficit, for the actual ET. This is for the ET deficit, and then that's our average biomass water use efficiency. Now, remember I talked about an ET minimum and an ET maximum, or I talked about a potential evapotranspiration. So what a potential evapotranspiration is, we will use that as our ET maximum. Now that is the equivalent of our actual ET plus our ET deficit. Remember, because our ET deficit is how much did we deviate from ideal conditions. So that's why you add those two together. That's your top one. And then your ET minimum is your actual evapotranspiration. That's how much water you have used. Now you've got a top and bottom margin of water requirement for that season. Remember that is for that block, for that specific season, under those specific seasonal conditions. If you want to convert that to cubic meters per hectare, it's a very easy calculation. It's that times 10. Now we have what our water requirement is. And then you can even go so far as to use this value here and go compare that to both your irrigation data and your rain data. Because remember, our actual ET, it doesn't specify where that water comes from. It's all water from every source. Rain, mist, water table, your capillary water, your buurman's dam, but like any type of water it can use. So, and then also you can't just go, okay, 552 millimeters, I had 200 millimeters of rain in the year. No, you can't just deduct that 200 millimeters of rain from that, because not all rain is efficient enough to negate irrigation. I mean, anything under, I think 12 millimeters, half an inch, yeah, 12 millimeters doesn't count. You can't replace an irrigation. So you can then go selectively and deduct your rain during your growing season, and then also how much irrigation you gave. And then you can work out like an irrigation water use efficiency for yourself. There's a lot of like let's call it after effects that you can do with the data in FruitLook. You can then even go, okay, that was my actually evapotranspiration. From that block, I got a harvest of 60 ton per hectare. So that's 6,000 kilograms. And that's how many milliliters. So my yield water use efficiency was that divided by that. I got 108 kilograms per millimeter of water, of ET. So then you can go compare different seasons. If you adapted your management practices, let's say you brought in a mulch, let's say you brought in a cover crop, then you can go see, is it making a difference in my water use efficiency? Am I winning? And even if it's your yield water use efficiency, because you can't just go on your biomass water use efficiency. You don't harvest all the biomass. Fruit is a very small component of your biomass. Unless you harvest the whole plant, you'd rather calculate your yield water use efficiency. Or you can go income water use efficiency, where you then take how much income did you get per that block, per millimeter of water. We even convert that to cubic meters of water. So when you calculate all of that up, and you need to decide, okay, I'm going to expand my operation, what's going to give me the biggest buck per drop? Then you can go choose that. Or if you're looking to push tonnage, you can see, okay, where do I get the most kilograms per millimeter of water applied or used? There's various things that you can use. You can even use this data, but pull the historical data, get a couple of years of these average water requirements, and then look at what your running average is for your water requirement, and then work out, this is my capacity, this is my normal rainfall. If I get only 75% of my normal rainfall, and this is my irrigation capacity that I get from the scheme, can I still maintain what I have on this farm, or am I over capacity then? And you can make these decisions and build resilience for yourself, so that when another drought situation comes, you know, okay, I can tolerate up to this level, I can keep going 100%. And then when, things start changing, you can adapt to that. But the thing is, you've got the numbers to work with. It's something that you can use to make calculations with. Do you have any questions regarding using the raw FruitLook data in the back? Or any questions? Okay, but if there's no questions, then I would like to say thank you so much for attending the third part of this webinar series. Again, I think most of you have the details of Dianca, and also for the FruitLook website itself. You can always contact us afterwards. What I always say is, do it. Just do it. You can't break it. I hope you can't break it, but you can't break it. And even if you delete a block accidentally, it's also not the end of the world. We can just redraw that field in for you. And go mad. If you see anything interesting, please let us know. We're always going to see if you come across any interesting discoveries or how you use the data, even if it's like in a non-conventional way. We are always looking for stories like that on how people use free-click data. But if there's no further questions, I think we've gone through absolutely everything on the website itself. I would like to say thank you very much for attending, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. And yeah, thank you for attending.